Nowadays, we hear a lot about the environment. But what is the environment? It's the place we live in, the air we breathe, the water we drink, the food we eat, the home we live in. Because we live with other people, we depend on each other. But there are other people, too, whose help we need if we're to keep healthy. Years ago, people didn't worry much about the water they drank. They didn't know it could be the cause of sickness. Now look at all the trouble we go to. The water for Anthony's house comes from the River Severn. But although the river is quite a clean one, compared with many rivers, the water is not clean enough to be drunk until it's been treated in the waterworks. This large grill stops all very large objects getting into the works. Perhaps a tree trunk has fallen into the river, or someone has thrown tins into the water. The small pieces of rubbish, the leaves and the twigs, have to be taken out using a sieve. The water is then pumped up to be cleaned further. The next step is to take out the very small pieces of dirt. They're so small that a sieve won't stop them. Special chemicals are poured into these large tanks. They make the dirt stick together and sink to the bottom. The water is now nearly clean enough to drink. To stop it getting dirty again, it's kept in tanks and pipes. This is the last time that anyone will see this water before it comes out of the tap. Chlorine is added, just enough to kill the germs. The water is now ready for use, but that's not the end of the story. After we've used it, it is fed down into the sewers, along with rainwater and rubbish from the gutters. There are tea leaves and scraps of food from sinks, dirty water from baths and lavatories. All these arrive at the sewage works for the water to be cleaned up for drinking again. Large pieces of rubbish, pieces of wood, rags and tins are stopped by the first grill and have to be scraped out by hand. Smaller pieces of paper and rubbish are lifted from the sewage waste by a mechanical scraper. Even with the rubbish removed, the sewage is still very dirty. This dirt can't be removed by grills and scrapers, and the engineers at the sewage works have to try another method. The sewage flows slowly into a large tank and out the other side. Because it's moving slowly, the heavy pieces of dirt, stones and grit from the road, have time to sink to the bottom of the tank. Another machine scrapes all these pieces from the bottom and into a bin to be thrown away. Another much larger tank is used so that even the very light pieces of dirt have time to sink to the bottom. The liquid runs over the edge of the tank to be cleaned further. The revolving arms spray it over a bed of stones. On the stones live a large number of tiny animals. Some are large enough to be seen. Worms, for example. Bacteria and green slime live on these stones. The bacteria have plenty of oxygen, and they've changed the sewage liquid into clean water. Here's the clean water being put back into the river, ready to be used all over again, thanks to the work that's gone on behind the scenes. Many years ago, we used to grow all our own food. Now we rely on other people to grow it for us. And sometimes it's even been cooked before we buy it.
I don't like the smell of this. Would you like to try it? Here, Granny. You're I'm afraid I don't fancy it either, dear.
Just occasionally, things can go wrong.
I don't like that.
I'll go over and see
I
what's
want
happening.
honey as well.
This doesn't often happen because there are other people we seldom meet who keep an eye on these things for us. Roger Berry is a public health inspector. He's just one of the many at work all over the country, making sure that food is prepared and handled properly. He inspects regularly places like food factories, cafes, school canteens, and today, a supermarket. In a supermarket, it's behind the scenes where most of the food is handled. So this is where the public health inspector goes to work. Every precaution must be taken to prevent harmful germs passing into an area where food is kept. So people handling the food must always wear a clean overall and cover their hair. Wherever food is prepared, there must be washing facilities for all the staff. The inspector checks that there are supplies of hot and cold water, soap, a nail brush and clean towels, and he washes his own hands before he starts looking around. In a butcher's shop where knives and choppers are used, a first aid cupboard is also essential because any minor cuts must be covered up immediately. Apart from personal cleanliness, equipment must be kept clean and in good condition. This powerful machine is used for cutting up frozen meat into smaller joints, and if it is not cleaned thoroughly after use, scraps of meat left on the blades and container would go bad and infect the next lot of meat.
How often are you cleaning this machine?
Once a day. Thoroughly, that is.
What are you using?
A recommended steriliser.
Is there a detergent to use this one?
It's a type of detergent, non-tasty.
Yes. Do you use very much hot water on it?
Oh, plenty of hot water. It's stripped down completely and put into the deep sinks.
Apart from the machinery, knives must be kept scrupulously clean. Now that plastic is used for the handles, the whole knife can be washed in very hot soapy water.
When does this book deliver?
Tuesday.
Do you get very much trouble with these?
No, they're fairly good. The supplies are pretty good with it.
Do you prefer the plastic handled knives?
Yes, well, they're better to clean and they don't get so much disease into them.
How often do you clean them?
Well, every time we finish cutting something, we wipe them down.
While the inspector is talking, he has a look at the butcher's hands to make sure they're clean.
Scrub the inside.
We've seen that people handling food and all the equipment used must be clean. But food poisoning can be caused if the food itself is not in good condition. The public health inspectors keep a watchful eye on this too. Not all the meat we eat is produced in our own country. We buy meat from abroad. But we will not allow any meat into this country unless it has been passed and has a stamp on it to say so. Home-killed meat like this comes straight from the meat market and has already been checked by another health inspector. It is not deep frozen like the meat from abroad, but is kept in a cold room called a chiller room until it's ready for the customer.
Is it all English made in here?
It is, yes.
The standards of food hygiene are very high in Britain. All these regulations have been made to protect our health, and it's the public health inspector's job to see that these regulations are carried out. That's why the food we buy is so seldom bad. They've enjoyed their meal, even though they were unlucky with that pie. Now it's time to clear up. Everyone lends a hand.
Mummy, there's maggots in the bin. Come and have a look.
Look at this. Years ago, the streets of towns used to be littered with waste, which was just thrown out of the windows. We know now that rats and flies can carry diseased germs, which might harm us. So nowadays, men like these work to keep our environment clean and healthy. This is a modern disposal works to which the dustmen bring our rubbish. It's shaken around in a great drum. Then it's moved along a conveyor belt. These men are sorting out the rags and old clothes. The rags and clothes are stacked in a large metal box. Then they're pressed down. The squashed bale is removed. Next, the men look for cardboard. All the pieces of cardboard are put into this special baler. The pieces are cut up and squashed together. There are also lots of old tin cans and rubbish. Here they are being sorted out by a moving magnet. From here, the tins slide down a chute into a crushing machine. The tins are being crushed into a block, just like the old clothes. The holes in the floor lead to the furnace, where the rest of the rubbish is burned. There it goes, tumbling down into the flames. When all the rubbish has been burned, the furnace is emptied, and the ashes are carried off to be used for road making and other useful purposes. So there we are. Our health depends on good neighbours we never meet.
Very attractive, I must say.
And of course, it depends on us too.